disturbingly easy to access. This is uniquely an American problem. Assault weapons were designed for one purpose only: to carry out massive lethal attacks by sustained rapid-fire shooting in just a very short period of time. Truly, these are weapons of war made for simply the battlefield and not our streets, not our schools, not our communities. Too often, we hear from gun safety opponents that partisanship is what prevents us from reinstating an assault weapons ban. I'd like to remind those opponents that this is a policy on which President Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan shared the same opinion. Together with Gerald Ford, these former presidents wrote Congress in support of a federal assault weapons ban in May of 1994. And for the 10 years following, this country had a bipartisan assault weapons ban on the books, and it was working. We have the data to show that this policy saved lives. A 2019 study examined American mass shooting fatalities from 1981 to 2017. During the 10-year federal ban from 1994 to 2004, mass shooting fatalities, just as it was stated moments ago, were 70% less likely to occur. So why then do our Republican colleagues continue to refuse to act? Is the campaign support from the NRA worth more than the lives of the very constituents that they swore an oath to protect and serve? Is fear of a political challenge an unacceptable answer to give to grieving parents who have lost their children in a school shooting? I challenge those who believe that this epidemic of gun violence is too great a challenge for our deliberative body to solve. The Republican majority has been mum in response to more than 100 daily gun deaths in our country. More than 100 people in this country die every single day, and they are silent. And they have continued to dig their heels in the ground while our families continue to be ripped apart. We owe it to the American people to seek solutions to this problem, to seek solutions to their pain and to the carnage and to the broken families and the broken communities, not hide behind the gun lobby and its waning influence. As we reintroduce this legislation today, we will continue to advocate for banning assault weapons to every legislator on this Hill who will listen. And for those who refuse to listen, don't worry, we are not backing down. We know that a majority of the American people are on our side. The polling, the data, the research shows that. As long as these weapons of war remain a threat to our children and our classrooms and innocent civilians in grocery stores and civilians in our movie theaters and those in our houses of worship, I refuse to stay quiet. I owe my son that legacy. And for all the families like myself that have lost loved ones due to the carnage of gun violence, I promise you, we will never back down and we will never stop fighting for you. And now at this time, it is my honor and my privilege to introduce to you a champion of gun violence prevention, Senator Murphy.
Thanks, Lucy. Appreciate it. Well, Lucy, thank you so much. You are a hero to so many of us, and you are right to remind our opponents, the gun lobby Republicans who choose to continue to stay silent, that we are never, ever giving up. This is the moral cause of our country, to make sure that our children do not fear for their lives when they walk out their door every morning to walk to school or while they sit in school. It's really hard to explain the power of a modern assault weapon, an AR-15 or an AR-15 variant. The image that comes to mind for me is the image in the hallways of that school in Uvalde, Texas. Inside a classroom was one frail young man with an assault weapon. Outside that classroom were 300 armed law enforcement guards and officers, cowering, afraid to open the door to that classroom because they feared not that young man, but they feared the single weapon that he had in his hands. One AR-15 up against 300 armed officers, and the AR-15 won that day. And there are dozens of children who are dead. So we are here today to just tell you that we're not giving up. This bill is important. It will save lives. You heard what happened for the 10-year period when this country came together on a bipartisan basis and decided to ban assault weapons. But we continue to have proof after proof that when we change the laws to make it just a little bit harder for dangerous people to get their hands on dangerous weapons, we save lives. In 2022, after 30 years of the gun lobby running this place, we passed the first meaningful anti-gun violence legislation in 3 decades. It included a provision that made it a little bit harder, but meaningfully harder, for young buyers to get their hands on assault weapons. That effectively imposed a 3-day waiting period. It made a number of other meaningful changes in our gun laws. And guess what has happened since we passed that law? School shootings in this country have dropped by 23%. Mass shootings have dropped by 25%. Urban gun crime is down by 20%. We have shown, whether it be back in 1994 or in 2022, that when we pass common sense gun laws that still allow for law-abiding citizens to get their hands on a weapon to protect their home or to shoot for sport, we save countless numbers of lives. So we are going to keep pressing, because not only is the assault weapons ban the right thing to do, it is the popular thing to do. Every single year when you go into the field and ask Americans what they think of an assault weapons ban, of just making sure that these weapons designed to kill as many people as quickly as possible are solely in the hands of the military and law enforcement, by increasing numbers, they tell Congress that it's past time to stand up and do the right thing by our kids. So I'm really glad to be here. I thank Senator Schiff for spending the time to honor the work that Dianne Feinstein did to bring us to this moment. We have momentum to pass this bill, in part because Dianne Feinstein stood up to the gun lobby, passed that bill in 1994, and we have the data. We have the information at our hands to know that the assault weapons ban works. So we stand in her very big shoes today. We stand with literally hundreds of thousands of parents and students, Americans from every part of this country, who say it's time. It's time for us to put our kids before the profits of the gun lobby. So thanks, Senator Schiff. Thanks, Lucy, for making this a reality, making this a priority. Every single day, I get to wake up and do this work with the man that I was standing next to in that firehouse in Sandy Hook. A lot of things that we saw and heard that day, we both wish we didn't see and hear, but it changed both of our lives. My senior senator, Senator Dick Blumenthal.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Thank you, Senator Murphy, Senator Schiff. Chris is right. We went through the heartbreaking trauma, the sickening experience of going to the firehouse after that Sandy Hook massacre and meeting the parents of those children. I had been involved in this issue since the early 1990s as Attorney General of the state of Connecticut, when Connecticut passed its assault weapon ban, and it was attacked in the courts. I went to court, tried the case, argued it in the state Supreme Court after we won it in the trial court, and Connecticut had an assault weapon ban. But we all know that guns have no respect for state boundaries. The strongest assault weapon ban by any state is no better than the weakest in another state. And that's why we need this national law. A national law will save lives. And my thanks to Senator Murphy for championing the Bipartisan Safer Community Act. We know from the numbers that he just gave you, the numbers tell you these measures work. Keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people, dangerous to themselves because they want to commit suicide, or dangerous to others, and you save lives. But what is so searing and profound for me are the faces and voices of the victims. In their name, we need to honor their loss with action. Honor with action. We can save lives if we take the lessons from the laws that have been passed. And in Connecticut, where we have a stronger assault weapon ban, we have Ethan's law requiring safe storage. We have a better background check bill. We have a red flag statute. The combination of these measures has reduced gun violence dramatically. These laws work. They save lives. We ignore that lesson at our peril, but more importantly, at the peril of children and moms and dads and others who are the real victims. And the trauma of assault weapon injuries and deaths is not just the individuals who are injured or killed. It is also the trauma of seeing it, of hearing about it, of experiencing it when kids learn or watch it. And that trauma seeps into the consciousness of America and affects all of us. So I'm grateful to stand here with Senator Schiff. Thank you for continuing to champion this measure in the great tradition of Dianne Feinstein and Chuck Schumer, who has been an advocate of it, staunch and steadfast. And my hope is, let me just say finally, that this measure will, in fact, be bipartisan. I know it sounds naive or futile, but I still believe, as I did back in the 1990s, that gun violence prevention is not red or blue, it is American. And America is uniquely dangerous from gun violence. Among the industrialized countries, we have higher rates of gun violence and deaths than any other major developed country, and we need to make it bipartisan. I feel that we will, and I have the honor now of introducing Senator Schiff's partner in this effort, Senator Alex Padilla, who has been an advocate from his first days in the United States Senate. Thank you, Alex, for being here.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. I want to also thank my colleagues that are working so hard and diligently to reintroduce this assault weapons ban, and we're going to keep fighting until we get it passed and signed back into law. Senator Schiff, my partner in California, Senators Murphy and Blumenthal, Representative McBath, thank you for your passion, for your commitment, and a big thank you to all the gun safety advocates and survivors that are here, bringing your stories to the halls of Congress, trying to appeal to the hearts and the minds of our Republican colleagues. Senator Blumenthal, I'll tell you why I've been committed since day one in the Senate. It's because of my background in the state of California, which, like Connecticut, has an assault weapons ban. It was the first in the nation decades ago, as you heard from Senator Schiff. And the numbers don't lie. The assault weapon ban works. Fatalities are down because of it. Lives have been saved. The number of incidents have been reduced. But as you pointed out, state laws stop at the state line. And as long as it's easy for someone in California to leave the state and bring back an assault weapon, or somebody from a neighboring state to come to California with an assault weapon, we're still at risk. And so we need a national ban, as we had once upon a time under the leadership of our predecessor, Senator Feinstein. We're at a point where each year a new town in America is added to a heartbreaking list. A list that includes Columbine, Newtown, Parkland, Uvalde, Monterey Park, and many, many more. Now, I stand here not just as a senator, but as a proud father of 3 school-aged children. It was troubling enough the first time one of my kids came home and I asked them, so how was school today? In California, we're not unfamiliar with fire drills and earthquake drills. But when a child comes home explaining to parents what an active shooter drill is at school, it should make us all mad that that's what we are living in the United States of America in the year 2025. It doesn't have to be this way. Let alone the thought that there's been shootings in schools elsewhere in America, and it could happen in your own community. If it can happen anywhere in America, it can happen anywhere in America. And when it happens, our Republican colleagues may offer their thoughts and prayers, but sadly, that's it. They'll offer thoughts and prayers and then sit back and do nothing. If they do anything, it's they actively block our efforts like advancing an assault weapons ban and other common sense gun safety legislation. The country deserves better. And for those who hear the false argument that, oh, what about the Second Amendment? This is not about the Second Amendment. This is about saving lives. And it's not that complicated. As you've heard, the questions are actually very basic. Should military assault weapons be on the streets of our communities? No. Should weapons of war be found in our grocery stores, at concerts, in houses of worship? No. Are our Republican colleagues more loyal to the gun lobby or to the constituents that elected them to make their communities safer? So yes, today we are proudly and adamantly putting the assault weapons ban back on the table because we know these bans can save lives. We know they reduce the number of mass shootings. And we know that if we fail to act, more Americans, more children will die. So we're calling on our Republican colleagues, please have the backbone, have the courage to stand up and protect your constituents, protect our communities. Have the courage to put people over profits. And to all the advocates that are here, and especially those who are watching at home, please don't lose hope. Nearly 3 years ago, under Senator Murphy's leadership, we did pass the first gun safety legislation in 3 decades in America. And we know full well we did not do it alone. We did it because of your voices and your advocacy and your activism. You made a difference then, you're going to make a difference again. So as long as we're willing to fight for our children, We can't lose hope. There is hope. Call your members of Congress. Organize. Speak out. We can and we must win this fight. Thank you very much.
So I wish that Matt Holden's story didn't exist. Matt Holden was in a nearby classroom in Sandy Hook Elementary the morning of that shooting, a story that he can tell. But he remembers being told to be quiet, huddled in a corner by the janitor as the gunman was just steps away. He has chosen to take that trauma and demand change. So we're really glad here today to be joined by a number of courageous advocates, including young men and women like Matt, who have been survivors of these mass shootings. Matt is currently a student at George Washington University. He has been a very active member of the Newtown Action Alliance, and I'd like you to give him a big, warm welcome.
Thank you. I want to thank Senator Murphy for the introduction, and I want to thank everyone who came out today to show support for this cause. It really does mean so much to us as survivors. Well, like the Senator said, my name is Matt Holden. I'm a student at George Washington University, an advisory board member of the Newtown Action Alliance, and I'm also a survivor of the Sandy Hook school shooting. 12 years ago, when I was just 6 years old, I hid in my first grade classroom as a gunman armed with an AR-15 and high-capacity magazines, hunted and murdered 20 of my friends and classmates and 6 of our teachers in less than 5 minutes. I've spent every day since trying to live in a world that still allows those weapons of war to be sold legally to civilians. A world where kids like me are expected to survive, to grow up, and to somehow carry this trauma like it's normal. It is not normal. What happened in my school should have been the moment this nation changed, but it wasn't. So survivors like me had to become the change. Alongside the families from Newtown, Parkland, Uvalde, and other communities impacted by AR-15 shootings, I have walked the halls of Congress. We've shared our pain. We have begged lawmakers to put lives before politics. And in 2022, we helped pass the assault weapons ban through the House of Representatives. We did that. Survivors did that. Not because we wanted to, but because we had no choice. Today, I want to thank Senator Schiff, Blumenthal, Murphy, Padilla, and Representative McBath for reintroducing the assault weapons ban of 2025. This bill is the product of years of tireless organizing by people who lost everything and chose to turn their grief into action. It honors the legacy of Senator Dianne Feinstein, and it represents the strongest, most comprehensive legislation we have to get weapons of war off our streets. AR-15s do not belong in our homes or our schools. High-capacity magazines do not belong in our communities. These are not tools of self-defense. These are tools of mass murder. We know it. The gun industry knows it. Congress knows it. I'm 18 now. I go to class. I study for finals. I try to build a future for myself and my future family. But every time I hear about another school shooting, I'm back in that classroom in Sandy Hook. I'm back to being just 6 years old, hiding, listening, waiting to die. That memory doesn't fade. It just hardens into resolve. We don't need thoughts and prayers. We need courage. We need action. And we need every single member of Congress right now to decide if they're going to stand with us, the survivors, or stand with the industry that arms the next shooter. Pass this bill now so that no other child has to grow up with a lifetime of trauma. Thank you.
I'm really proud to stand here with Matt of Connecticut and others of his classmates, his community that have experienced this trauma. I want to be a little bit graphic in introducing the next person who's going to speak with you. You know, Senator Schiff talked about, and so did Lucy McBath, these weapons of war. The reason why they're weapons of war is not just that they kill, but they kill more efficiently and speedily and rapidly. And when a bullet from an AR-15 or an assault weapon type gun hits a human body, it explodes inside. It rips apart the organs. It, in effect, decimates the insides of a human being. It produces a wound that is often irreparable, with a velocity and force that is unmatched, and produces a scene that is absolutely horrific. And a young person like Alaya Eastman, who has lived through the Parkland shooting, has experienced that trauma and still has the courage and the strength to come here and talk about this cause with the clear-eyed strength and courage that this movement demands. And it is a movement because of young people like her and Matt. This movement has gained force in America because of the young people willing to step forward. She not only lost friends at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, but then she lost her uncle, who was shot and killed in Brooklyn, New York. She has spoken at March for Our Lives. She's testified before the House and the Senate. She is part of Enough, founding member, a national spokesperson for Brady, and she's the co-founder of Concerned Citizens DC, a graduate of Trinity Washington University in Washington, DC. She's an accomplished, really extraordinarily impressive young woman, and I'm very proud to introduce her to you now.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal, for the introduction. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. And a special thank you to Senator Schiff and Representative McBath, and all the other sponsors for introducing the assault weapons ban of 2025. My name is Alaya Eastman, and I am a youth organizer and co-founder of Team Enough. In 2018, I survived the deadliest high school shooting in American history. Using an AR-15, a weapon built for the battlefield, a gunman attacked my high school, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. It only took 6.5 minutes for my classroom to become a war zone. 6.5 minutes is all it took to murder 14 of my classmates and 3 school administrators. 6.5 minutes is all it took to injure another 17. 6.5 minutes and 150 rounds of ammunition. I stand before you not just as a survivor, but as a living testimony to why we're here. The reality is clear and urgent. Banning assault weapons in high-capacity magazines is not political. It's a necessary, life-saving solution to our nation's disgusting and egregious gun violence epidemic. We should be embarrassed. Our nation's survivors, like myself, especially child survivors, should not be able to relate to war stories from our veterans. But yet, because of the proliferation of these weapons of mass destruction in our communities, we can. In shootings where assault weapons or high-capacity magazines are used, 155% more people are shot and 47% more are killed. The expiration of the federal assault weapons ban in 2004 continues to create devastating consequences for the safety of our communities. This is BS, because we know these laws work. In the decade after the ban expired, there was a staggering 347% increase in mass shootings and a 239% increase in fatalities. Just look at the deadly shooting at Florida State University just 2 weeks ago, a school where many of my classmates from Parkland attend, who now have had to experience their second mass shooting. How many lives will it take for change to finally happen? We don't need thoughts and prayers. We can't just blame the actions of an individual when this country continues to put profit over the lives of children, your children. At FSU, the shooter used a .45 caliber pistol to kill 2 innocent people and devastate the lives of an entire community. What's even more frightening is that he had an AR-15 waiting in his car, the same gun used to kill my classmates. If he had returned with that assault rifle, how many more innocent lives would we be mourning today? If the shooters from my high school's gun didn't jam, how many more innocent lives would we have mourned? Americans are living in fear every day because of these weapons of war. Communities are forever wounded. Children are afraid to go to school. Teachers are afraid to go to school. And parents are afraid to send their children to school. This isn't the reality we have to live in. The fear that grips our schools, movie theaters, places of worship, and even parades is not inevitable. It's the direct result of policy choices we can and must correct, or else we are a country full of cowards whose hands are stained by the blood of American youth who are gunned down in a country who continues to show them that they don't care about their lives. So as we witness the Trump administration dismantle critical gun safety measures at the federal level, Congress must step up to pass this essential assault weapons ban. This is and has been life or death. Thank you.
Alea and Matt, thank you for that powerful testimony to what you have experienced and for sharing that with all of us and for your incredible advocacy. It is now my honor to introduce another powerful young leader in the cause of common sense gun safety laws, and that is Lucy Sarkisian. Lucy is from Colorado. She has her own tragic experience with gun violence at her school that she will share with you, that she has shared with others. And Lucy, we are so grateful to you for your courage in speaking out and your tenacity, and it's an honor to introduce Lucy Sarkisian.
Hi, I'm Lucy Sarkisian, and unfortunately, like Alea and Matt, I'm here because I too am a school shooting survivor. When I was 14 years old, 2 students walked into my school and opened fire in the classroom across the hallway from me. They shot 9 people, including killing one boy, Kendrick Castillo. But listening to Alea and Matt makes me think about how they weren't armed with AR-15s. They were armed with a rifle and a handgun. And that probably saved my life. I had mere seconds to go into lockdown when the shooting happened. Literally frantically panicking, trying to find a spot to hide, trying to close the door before a gunman could get in. And I shudder to think that if they had been armed with an AR-15, I would not be standing here today. My life would have been cut short at 14 years old. 9 people being shot in a school is a tragedy, and it is unacceptable. But it's not 34 people like we saw at Parkland. It's not 20 dead first graders like we saw in Sandy Hook. And it's not more than 20 dead fourth graders like we saw in Uvalde. The facts are clear. Assault weapons uniquely inflict damage upon their victims. And they exist for one purpose: to kill. The damage inflicted is exemplified in so many stories. But one that touches me is of my very close survivor friends, Sandy and Lonnie Phillips, whose daughter Jessie Gawi was murdered at 24 years old in the Aurora movie theater shooting. When Sandy and Lonnie went to identify her body, she had a 6-inch hole in her face from where an AR-15 bullet ripped through it. At 24 years old, her face was so mangled from a bullet, they could barely recognize their own daughter. And those are the stories of countless victims brutally slaughtered by AR-15s. Think back to the children at Uvalde who couldn't be identified by anything other than their shoes because their bodies were so badly mangled. Do we really want to be a country where children's bodies are being pulled out of schools mangled because we refuse to take any semblance of action to fight? No, we don't want to be that country. Which is why I commend the efforts of the senators and Congresswoman McBath here today. Because while their Republican colleagues are finding new ways to terrorize transgender children in this country, they're actually taking action to make it safer for kids in the United States of America. I have lived with post-traumatic stress disorder for the last almost 6 years of my life. Next Wednesday will mark 6 years since my shooting happened in Colorado. I was a middle schooler. Being a school shooting survivor robbed me of my adolescence. I didn't get to have normal experiences. I went to 3 high schools because my anxiety was so severe I couldn't sit still in a class. Just in December, I acquired a service dog because my PTSD is still that bad. And yet, I'm lucky because my gunmen weren't armed with an AR-15. I had the time to close my door. But if they had, I don't think it would have turned out the exact same. So that is what makes this bill so critical. When you think about, say, the Second Amendment, I urge you to ask yourself, is a piece of paper that was written by slaveholders more important than the kids whose parents didn't even get to recognize them when they were buried? Is it more important than Jessie Gawi, who had a 6-inch hole ripped through her face? Is it more important than Sandy and Lonnie Phillips, who that's their last memory of their daughter? The answer is a resounding no. And while the Republicans in Congress might try to debate this as a political issue, it's not a political issue. You've heard from me, you've heard from Alea, and you've now heard from Matt about the devastating effects of gun violence on your life when you survive it as a young person. We're hearing AR-15s are uniquely dangerous, uniquely damaging, and uniquely need to be regulated and got off our streets. So, support this bill. Today is the day for action. It's not tomorrow. It's not after the next Parkland happens. It's not after the next Sandy Hook happens. It's not after the next STEM. Today is the day for action. Because I don't want to stand here in 6 more years and be saying the exact same thing with a new group of survivors. None of us want that. Ban assault weapons now.
Thank you.
Lucy, thank you so much. Well, nothing could be more powerful than what these young people have said and what they have experienced. And I thank them for turning that traumatic experience of their life into the most powerful advocacy possible. My wife and I had the experience all too common for parents of getting a message from one of our kids that they were sheltering in place, that there was a shooting going on nearby. In my son's case, he was in college and the shooting was off campus and he was fine. But we experienced that momentary terror, that momentary horror that I think all parents do when they all too often get a message like we did, let alone worse, as Lucy has experienced and so many other parents and family members have experienced. So I thank you to all the survivors for sharing their stories with us today. We're happy to respond to a few questions. Yes.
Senator, do you think this bill has a path forward this Congress, and how are the discussions you have with Republican colleagues about it?
Well, I think the path is a very difficult one, given that the Republicans control both houses, and at this point they are still very much in the thrall of the NRA. And what has always been so perplexing, galling to me, is that when you ask the actual membership of the NRA, they will tell you they support an assault weapons ban. 60 or 70% of NRA members support an assault weapons ban. So they're not even doing what their members want. They're certainly not doing what their constituents want. And yet they are beholden to this powerful lobby. Until that changes, until we get a few Republican members. It doesn't have to be a majority, it certainly doesn't have to be all, but until we get a few that place a higher priority on the lives of their constituents and the young people in their districts, then we are going to have difficulty getting this bill through. So I want to acknowledge that reality, but I also want to say that we have seen things pass in this Congress for well or for ill that we never would have imagined we would see the day, and it has happened. This bill will pass. It is just a question of how quickly we can get it passed, and I'm certainly determined, and I know Richard is, to do everything I can to make sure that day comes soon.
Let me just add a word to concur with Senator Schiff. This Congress is definitely uphill. The president went to an NRA convention. He's received contributions and donations from the gun industry. They've just disbanded the Office of Justice Programs that provides $250 million for community violence intervention and prevention. Clearly, they are in the pockets of the gun industry. But they're out of touch with America on this issue, as so many others. And one of the purposes of this measure, which Senator Schiff has so courageously introduced, is to hold them accountable. Gun violence will be on the ballot in 2026. Gun violence will be on the ballot in every congressional district across the country. And holding members of Congress accountable, our colleagues, as well as members of the House, will send a message and will advance this historic cause. We cannot abandon, forget, ignore the imperative of the history that Senator Feinstein and now Senator Schiff are working so hard to advance.
Make one last comment on this subject, because I think there's a need on this subject, as on so many others, that we have hope that we can make progress. And one of the things that's given me hope on this issue is I have seen how it has changed over the years. I remember a time when I first got to Congress when there were a great many Democrats who ran away from this issue. Democrats from purplish or reddish districts or states, they didn't want to deal with this issue and ran away from it. That has changed dramatically. People are running towards this issue. I remember when Jason Crow was first running for the House, I went out to Colorado to campaign with him, and far from avoiding the issue, he raised it himself at one of the town halls. He made the point that if you want an assault weapon, you should do what he did, and that is join the military. They are very efficient for killing people at war, but they have no place in civilian hands. And so I have seen the ground we have gained, but it has not been enough, and we will continue to press forward until we get this passed. I think we have time for one last question. Oh, that's it? Okay. Oh, please.
Okay. And I just wanted to make one more comment. Since I hold the assault weapons ban in the House, currently we have over 100 signers, 100 co-sponsors, so that should give you some hope. We will continue to try to build upon that. We have a lot of new members now in Congress that we've not had the chance to be able to massage and encourage them to become a part of this really life-saving policy, but we'll continue to do so. What I will say, it has been somewhat tragic, is that in the 117th Congress, we did have Republicans that were willing to work with us. The 118th Congress, they started to drop off. And it will be, as you know, the senator said, even more difficult now in the 119th because of this administration to get our Republican colleagues to hope that they have enough courage to stand and do what's right by their constituents. But we do have over 100 co-sponsors now in the House that have signed onto the assault weapons ban, so there is hope.
Thank you all very much, and once again, my thanks to these incredibly brave young people for sharing their stories with us today. They are the reason why we continue this fight. Thank you very much.